Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya Namaskaram. Today I'm going to be talking about verse 17 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham. This is the last in a series of 3 verses that are all, to some extent, connected. That is, these verses are talking about they're all implying that the folly of thinking that we can do anything by our own power. In verse 15, what Bhagavan said is, not knowing the fact that they move by Shakti. Shakti here means the supreme power, the divine power. In the original verse of Guru Vachakavai, from which Bhagavan summarized, that is, there were a couple of verses that Bhagavan summarized as this verse. The word Murugan used was Chit Shakti, so that's probably the original word Bhagavan used, but he used just the word Shakti here in this verse, but he's referring to Chit Shakti. Chit Shakti means the power of pure awareness, which is the ultimate power. The power by which everything, all other powers derive their power from this power of Chit Shakti. So, not knowing the fact that they move by Shakti, the buffoonery of lunatics who strive thus, we shall acquire all siddhis, is a match for the story of the lame person who said, if anyone helps me rise, what measure of his enemies? Bhagavan is, in other words, saying this is as foolish as a lame person who cannot even stand unaided, who says, if anyone will help me to stand, what of his enemies before me? In other words, I'll easily conquer my enemies. Like that, thinking that we can do anything by our power is foolishness. And thinking that if we do certain types of tapas or certain austerities, but we will be able to acquire siddhis, supernatural powers, and we may think to ourselves that we are doing this for good. We want to acquire power for doing good in the world, but that is just mere foolishness. Everything is happening as it's meant to happen by that one Parameshwara Shakti, as Bhagavan put it in paragraph 13 of Nana. And then, because he mentions siddhis here, in the next verse, in verse 16, he points out the desire for siddhis, for supernatural powers, or for any type of accomplishment. Siddhis means accomplishment or achievement, but that's in the broadest sense, but usually siddhis refer to supernatural powers, but we can take it in a broader sense to refer to any achievement. So long as our mind is yoked to achieving anything, accomplishing anything, we cannot attain liberation, is what Bhagavan means in verse 16. That is what he says is, since pacification of mind, here pacification of mind, chitta shanti, means the complete dissolution of mind, alone is liberation, which is accomplished. Siddhamam implies which is always accomplished, because it's our real nature. Since pacification of mind alone is liberation, which is accomplished, how will those who yoke their mind on siddhis, which are not accomplished without activity of the mind, immerse in the bliss of liberation in which turbulence of mind has ceased? That is, so long as the mind is active, we are in bondage. It's only the complete dissolution, the permanent dissolution, the destruction, annihilation of mind alone is liberation. That is the implication here. When such is the case, setting our heart upon siddhis, or yoking our mind on siddhis, as Bhagavan expresses it here. In other words, having strong desire to acquire any type of accomplishment, which cannot be accomplished without activity of mind, how can we immerse in the bliss of liberation? And then in verse, so those are the previous two verses. Now we come to verse 17, where Bhagavan gives a couple of analogies. What he says in this verse is, Bu Param Tanga Ire, that is God who is, when God is bearing all the burden of the world, Poli Ue Tangal Adu Gopuram Tangi Uru Gorani. What that means is, when God bears the burden of the world, the spurious soul bearing is a Gopuram Tangi for mockery. That is, Gorani means mockery. That is, on a Gopuram is the towers over the gateways of South Indian temples are called Gopuram. They're multi-storied towers, and right at the top, just there are four figures made out of plaster, but seem to be straining to carry the top part of the tower. But actually, they're not carrying it at all. They're just figures that are plaster figures that are made there. The weight of the top part of the tower is being borne by the tower as a whole. Just like that, we may think that we are carrying the burden of the world on our shoulders, even if not the burden of the whole world, at least the burden of our little corner of the world. I am working hard, I'm supporting my family, I'm doing this, I'm earning my money because I've worked hard, this is my money, and so I have every right over this. And if I manage to accumulate more money than other people, then I have right over this money. Even if others don't have enough, doesn't matter. I've worked hard, I've done this. That type of strong sense of doership and ownership on our action, claiming the credit for whatever we seem to have done, whatever we seem to have achieved, that is mere mockery, because like the Gopuram Tangi. Gopuram Tangi is not actually, Tangi means, Tangu is a verb that means to bear or to carry. A Gopuram Tangi is one who carries. A Gopuram Tangi, the one who seems to be carrying the Gopuram. They're not actually carrying it, but they seem to be carrying it. It's a mere mockery. Like that, if we think that we are doing anything, and but anything depends upon us, this is a mere mockery. Like those Gopuram Tangi figures who seem to believe that they're carrying the weight of the tower. If we think we are carrying anything, this is mere foolishness. God alone is bearing the burden of the entire world. So that's one analogy Bhagavan gives. That's in the first 1 3/4 lines. Then in the rest of the verse, Bhagavan gives another analogy, but it's the same analogy that he gave in Nana. What he says in the second half of the verse is Ma Baram Kol Vandi Sallavan. That means one who is Vandi means a cart. Here it's referring to a Puhe Vandi, a smoking cart. That's a train. So one who is traveling on a train, which is carrying a great burden. Sumeye Vandi Veyadu. Instead of putting the burden on the train, Tale Kondu Nalli Kondudu, suffering carrying it on their head, ever Kodu, whose fault? That is, someone traveling on a train that is carrying a great burden, not putting luggage on that implies not putting their luggage on the train, suffering carrying on head is whose fault? So as I say, this second half of the verse is is what Bhagavan is an analogy Bhagavan originally used when answering Shiva Prakasham Pillai. This, in the essay version of Nana, the essay version which is written by Bhagavan himself, this comes in the 13th paragraph. What Bhagavan says in the 13th paragraph of Nana is, this paragraph is all about surrender, giving ourselves entirely to God. So he starts this paragraph defining what it is, how we can give ourselves entirely to God. He says, being Atmanishta Param. That means Atmanishta Param means one who is firmly fixed as oneself. That implies being as we actually are, not giving even the slightest room to the rising of any thought except Atma-chintana. Atma-chintana literally means thought of oneself or self-thought, but it implies self-contemplation or self-meditation, self-attentiveness. Alone is giving oneself to God. So the implication here is, if we want to give ourselves wholly to God, we need to cease rising as ego. And so long as we attend to anything other than ourselves, we have already risen as ego. So in order to put an end to this rising as ego, we need to fix our attention on ourselves so firmly that we thereby give no room to the rising of any other thought. When we do so, we as ego will subside and be as we actually are. Being as we actually are, in this manner, alone is giving ourselves to God. People may then object, oh, but I've got so many, how can I think of nothing other than myself? How can I fix my attention on myself to the exclusion of all thought? If I do so, how can I do my work? How can I take care of my family? How can I've got a very responsible job. How can I carry out my responsibilities? Bhagavan answers in the next sentence. Even though one places any amount of, whatever amount of burden on God, that entire amount he will bear. That is, the implication here is, since in the previous sentence, he says we shouldn't give room to rising of any thought other than Atma-chintana. So the implication of this second sentence is, we need to, even the burden of thinking, we need to give that burden to God. If this mind, speech, or body has responsibilities, let God make it do whatever they're meant to do. As Bhagavan made clear in the note he wrote for his mother, whatever is to happen in our life, whatever we are to experience, whatever is to happen to us is determined by prarabdha. And whatever we need to do in accordance with that prarabdha, that is, in accordance with it, means in order for things to unfold, certain actions may be necessary on the part of our mind, speech, or body. So whatever actions are necessary to enable the prarabdha to unfold, those actions God will make us do. That's what Bhagavan says implies in the first sentence of the note he wrote for his mother. Avarava prarabdha prakaram adakanavan angan girundu atavipan. That is, in accordance with the destiny of each one, he who is for that, meaning God, being there, being in each place, being in the heart of each one of us, Atavipan will make us act. So the mind, speech, and body will be made to act in accordance with prarabdha. So nothing is actually done by us. We may want to, if we have desire to experience anything that we are not destined to experience, we are free to desire it, we are free to want it, and we are free to make effort for it. But however much effort we make, our efforts will not fructify unless it's already part of our prarabdha. That's why Bhagavan says in the next two sentences of that note he wrote for his mother, what is never to happen, Endrum Naduvadadu, Envichikarum naduvadu, what is never to happen, will not happen in spite of any amount of effort. That's however much we try to make something happen but is not destined to happen, it will not happen. So we have the freedom to want to make things happen, to try to make things happen, but they will not happen unless it is prarabdha, unless it's already allotted in prarabdha. And the converse of that, he says in the next sentence, Nāṛpadu entadeseyanam niladu. What is to happen will not stop in spite of any amount of obstruction. So if we are to undergo some prarabdha, whatever effort we make, we cannot stop it. It is going to happen. Iduve tinnam, this is certain. Ahalin monamai irake nandru. So the monamai irake nandru means, therefore, being silent is good. Being silent means not rising as ego. So if we hold on to that Atma-chintana, that will give no room for the rising of ego, and therefore no room for the rising of any other thoughts. That is giving ourselves to God. That is the implication of these three verses of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham, verses 15, 16, and 17. And then in the next sentence, he says, since one Parameshwara Shakti, Parama means supreme, Ishwara means God or the ruler. So the supreme ruling power, or the power of the Supreme Lord, or the supreme power of the Lord, whatever way we want to take it, it all amounts to the same, since that one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas. All karyas means whatever needs to be done or ought to be done, whatever needs to happen or ought to happen, he's driving it all. So everything is going to happen as it is meant to happen. So when that one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas, instead of we also yielding to it, why to be perpetually thinking it's necessary to do like this, it's necessary to do like that? That is, we need not think anything. If we truly trust Bhagavan, if we truly have faith in Bhagavan, we truly believe his teachings, we should understand it is not actually necessary for us to think of anything at all. The only thing we need to think of is ourselves. In other words, thinking of ourselves is a metaphorical way of saying putting our mind, putting our attention on ourselves. That's all we need to do. Nothing else is necessary. Everything else is going to happen as it's meant to happen. And then to illustrate this, Bhagavan brings, then in the final sentence of this 13th paragraph, he illustrates what he said in the previous sentence by saying, though we know that the train is going, bearing all the burdens, why should we who go traveling in it, instead of remaining happily, leaving our small luggage placed on the train, that means, suffer bearing it, our luggage, on our head? That is, if we think that we are bearing, that any burden needs to be borne by us, we will suffer unnecessarily. If we surrender the whole burden to God, let God let God make things happen as they're meant to happen, as he's doing anyway, that if we completely leave the entire burden on God, we will be sukhamai. We will, that is being happy. Sukhamai, he says, sukhamai Rama. Instead of being happy, leaving the entire burden on him, why to suffer? So carrying the burden on our head is unnecessarily suffering. So Muruganar wrote a series of 3 verses in Guru Vachaka Kavai, verses 171, 172, and 173, in which he, in 171, that is what Muruganar wrote in Guru Vachaka Kavai. All the verses of Guru Vachaka Kavai are recordings in verse form of what Bhagavan said. So Bhagavan would have given this analogy of Gopram Tangi, and Murugan recorded that in verse 171. And then in verse 172 and 173, he wrote in verse form what Bhagavan had said in the 13th paragraph of Nana. So the rough meaning of these 3 verses of Guru Vachaka Kavai are, 171 is, having its self-knowledge veiled by illusion, being bound by the fruits of sinful karmas, and suffering, having lost sight of the Supreme, the ego's play is a mere mockery, like the sculpture of like the sculpture which seems to carry the temple tower. And 172 is, would passengers, if wise, carry their luggage on their own heads while traveling on a train which hauls under steam power the heaviest loads like wisps of straw? And 173 is, likewise, since by its very nature the supreme power alone sustains all things, it is wise for men to leave the burden, that's the cares and anxieties of their life, on that supreme power, and thus feel free. The important thing here, by its very nature, that Parameshwara Shakti is making everything happen as it's meant to happen. So why should we, when it is happening automatically by the very nature of that one Parameshwara Shakti, why should we struggle carrying our own, thinking that we're carrying our own little burden, like that Gopram Tangi, which seems to be carrying the burden of the tower, but it's not actually doing anything. It's actually supported by the tower. It's right at the top of, near or close to the top of the tower. And it seems to be supporting what's the very top part of the tower. But that very top part of the tower is supported by the entire tower. Likewise, everything is supported by God. So why should we think that when we look at the world, we see so many problems, we see so many injustices, so many things. We may think, oh, this is very bad, I should rectify this. But whatever is happening in the world is happening as it's meant to happen, because this is all the fruit of, when we rise as ego, we do karmas under the sway of our Vishaya Vasanas. That's under the sway of our likes, dislikes, desires, and so on. The fruits of those karmas is what is given to us by God to experience as prarabdha. So this world is a place where we do karmas and experience the fruit of karmas. So this world was never meant to be a perfect place. In fact, embodied existence is itself imperfect. There's no such thing as a perfect embodied existence. Even if you're in the highest heaven, there'll still be problems there of one sort or another, because limiting ourselves as a body is itself the root of all problems. What we actually are is the one infinite whole. But when we limit ourselves as this body, we take on so many, along with this limiting ourselves to this body, we take on so many other limitations. And so we experience hunger, thirst, cold, heat, and all these things. And we seek ways to alleviate these things. And then part of a body that we've limited ourselves to is the mind, and this mind is constantly restlessly craving things. So even if we have everything we could need materially is provided for us, still our mind will not be satisfied. It'll go on seeking this or that, or seeking pleasure in bigger cars, faster airplanes, or whatever it is. That is, dissatisfaction is the very nature of embodied existence. So even those who dwell in the highest heaven, they will still be dissatisfied, because nothing less than infinite happiness can satisfy us, because infinite happiness is our own nature. So we are always craving that infinite happiness. So even the highest heaven is still a place of discontent, a place of dissatisfaction. So long as we rise as ego and experience ourselves, and consequently experience ourselves as I am this body, even if that body is a heavenly body in a heavenly world, we will still be dissatisfied. So the wise thing to do is to surrender ourselves completely to God by ceasing to rise as ego. I hope I answered that. I've explained those verses adequately. Does anyone have any questions about any of these verses?
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, if you have any questions, please post in the chat box and we will post it to Michael in the order received. So regarding this this verse, so one of the questions that keeps coming up is, practically implementing this, because we really don't know what is meant to happen, right? So people should still do what comes to their mind, and they do it, right? I mean, and they do.
There's only one thing we should do, according to Bhagavan. The only thing we should do is to hold on to Atma-chintana. Whatever is to happen is going to happen as it's meant to happen. Whatever actions are necessary on the part of our mind, speech, and body, they will be made to do those actions. So why should we rise as an ego, think, I have to do this, I have to do that, or should I do this, should I do that? Bhagavan said, why to think unnecessarily? Yield yourself to that higher power which is driving all karyas. That alone is the practical application. So long as we think we have to do anything, we have not understood the meaning of these 3 verses, or that very important 13th paragraph of Nana. We don't have to do anything. We just have to hold on to Atma-chintana. Atma-chintana means thought of ourselves. In other words, we have to put our mind on ourselves, on our being. By holding on to our being, we thereby subside and remain as our being. That's all we need to do, in inverted commas. It's not doing, it's just being. Summa iru, just be. That is the ultimate teaching.
Thank you, Michael. So there was a question that Robert Boyer posed. You might have seen it as the email too, but I'll just sort of summarize this. He focused on the word just be, sumayu. Right. So you said Bhagavan just wants us to be just be. So let me read his question. I just don't get the injunction to just be when there are so many minor ordinary things that constantly demand my very careful attention. Just as an example that we all can focus upon, after Ramana became enlightened, he got some money, checked the map, walked to a train station. And on his journey, he had to take further actions that affected where he ended up. But how are we to understand all these simple, ordinary actions together with the just be injunction? Without money, you can't ride the train. Without knowing what stations you're going from and to, you can't buy the ticket. Without taking real steps in the direction of the train station, you won't get there. So if I were to take just be in its pure extreme sense, I would sit here at my desk just being, but they will come and lock me up. If I keep saying ignore the body, they will also lock me up. So
who is the me they will lock up? It's only the body. And who is the me who is just sitting here? It's the body. And who is the me who thinks, I just have to sit here? That is the mind, which is a part of the body. Bhagavan didn't actually do anything. After that death experience, all doing ceased. All the actions of the mind, speech, and body that we call Bhagavan were not done by him, because he had died. He had literally died. That is, the body still lived in our view, but the I that had risen to say, I am this body, I am doing this action, that I had died. So all the actions that were done by that mind, speech, and body, taking the money from that given by his elder brother for paying his elder brother's college fees, taking a part of that to buy the train ticket, and looking at the map and all these things. None of these were done by Bhagavan. These were done by the body that we take to be Bhagavan, but he is not that body. All the teachings he gave us, it's all, as he said, it is that one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas. So that same supreme power that is driving everything, that is making everything happen as it's meant to happen, that power used the mind, speech, and body of Bhagavan to give us these teachings, to make us understand we don't have to do anything. But not doing anything, just being, doesn't mean just sitting. Because just sitting is only the body that is just sitting. Just being means not rising as ego. If we don't rise as ego, we don't identify the body, speech, or mind as I. So whatever work the mind, speech, or body may be doing is not done by me. It is, all these things are just happening according to the destiny. Is that a clear answer, Robert? Or is it still not satisfactory?
With the highest respect, you have not helped me at all.
Okay.
I am reminded of a magazine you may have come across in the 50s and 60s called Mad Magazine. And it featured a particular main character, and he's famous for sitting there looking out at the world saying, "What? Me worry?" What your advice seems to be about is as silly as that comic magazine.
Okay. Well, it may appear silly because we still have the sense of doership. This is what Bhagavan taught us.
Make my sense of doership disappear, please.
What causes the sense of doership? Who is it who has a sense of doership? It is ego. So long as we rise as ego, we cannot rise as ego without identifying this body as I. So as soon as we rise as ego, we identify the body as I, and the body here means all the five she's, the body, the life, the mind, the intellect, and the will. All these collectively we experience as I. So whatever actions are done by this body, speech, or mind are experienced by us as I am doing this. So how to get rid of this sense of doership? Only by getting rid of ego. And what is ego? Ego is a false awareness of ourself. So in order to get rid of this false awareness of ourself, we need to know what we actually are. Knowing what we actually are, that is the state of just being. Because what we actually are is not any instrument of action. It is just pure being.
My reaction is to simply say, with really greatest respect, you are simply telling me that I'm a dumbass.
We're all dumbasses. We are all dumb. So long as we think I am this body, what is dumber than that?
I mean, you know, you can say, well, let's consider 2 + 2 = 4. And if a student says, well, I just don't get it, after a while you throw up your hands.
Yeah. That's a very nice example. That is, how do we know that 2 + 2 = 4? It's just very clear to us. We just see it very clearly. So if someone really doesn't get it, how can you explain that 2 + 2 = 4 to someone who doesn't get it? You cannot. So in order to, the whole problem is the truth, what we actually are, is blindingly obvious, but we don't have the eyes to see it. Why don't we have the eyes to see it? Because we are constantly looking outwards, looking at all this multiplicity. Because we see ourselves as all this multiplicity, we don't see ourselves as the one thing that we actually are.
In the Zen school, you have a master come along and hit you with a stick to get you going.
Yes. Well, yeah. Some of us are so dumb. For me to go to a Zen school would be useless, because however many times he beat me with the stick, I still wouldn't see it. So the only way to see it is to look within. So long as we're looking outwards, no amount of beating. See, we don't have to go to a Zen school. Our whole life is beating us. You and I are both nearing the end of our life. How many beatings we've been through in this life? 60, 70, 80 years of beatings we've been experiencing, and we're still not getting it, because we're still looking outwards. We still think the solution is to be found in outward things. The solution is to be found only inside ourselves, in our own being.
With the greatest respect and humility, and the greatest thanks to you for your wonderful service to the world, I just don't get it.
I don't get it. I'm saying these words, but to really get it is just to be as we are.
I will continue to try.
Yeah, that's all we can do. Even if we say, oh, I've got it, I've understood Bhagavan's teaching, we've understood it only very superficially. If we have really understood Bhagavan's teaching is there's not the slightest happiness in any of the things of the world. Happiness is our own being. If we really understood that, we would attend only to our own being. We wouldn't attend to anything else. The very fact that we're still allowing our mind to go outwards means we've understood it at a superficial level, but deep down we still haven't really got it. So to really get it, we need to turn within and persevere in this practice. Then only it will become clear to us.
I'm sure you're right. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Robert.
Right.
So, even here in the center, the comments are basically Robert Boyer is echoing what many people think. He's not alone.
We're all in the same boat. The very fact that we're here talking about these
being
things,
explicit about
we
it,
still
but a lot
haven't
of people
really
are,
got it.
this is thinking the same. So the question arises: so how did, let's say, Lord Ram conduct what he had to do? Run the kingdom and all those things, even after becoming, after being established in his self-knowledge, and like Sri Krishna and so forth. How did they continue to do what they did? Or King Janak, for example, how did he run the whole kingdom? So that's what is it, that subtle thing?
Yeah, well, you're jumping ahead. We're only on verse 17. You're now jumping ahead to verses 26 and 27. That is Rama was able to do all these things because he knew what he actually is. By knowing what he actually is, everything. But when we know what we actually are, whatever is meant to happen will happen without our interference. Our only duty is just to be. So Rama didn't actually do anything. He was just being. But because he was just being, all the actions of his mind, speech, and body went on perfectly.
So just being is not meant to the physical body. You know, it's
no, it's not. No, it's not at all. It's nothing to do with the physical body or the mind.
We want to make sure we can clarify that.
But,
So
the mind and body, if we are just being, that means we're not rising as ego. If we're not rising as ego, there will be no agamya. That is, there's no ego to act under the sway of its vasanas. So whatever actions are done by mind, speech, or body, once ego is annihilated, are all prarabdha. So it's all actions, but that one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas. It's making everything happen.
Okay, yeah, that explains that.
The difference between the jnani and the ajnani, that is, for all of us, whatever is happening, it's all being driven by that supreme power. We cannot go against that supreme power at all. We can want to go against it, we can try to go against it, but what it will make happen alone will happen. So the difference between the jnani and the ajnani, the jnani, there's no rising of I. So the jnani is just being as it is. We can't even say as he is or as she is, because they're not the body, they're beyond gender. So the jnani is just being jnana, being pure awareness. But mind, speech, and body are being driven by that supreme that one Parameshwara Shakti. Our mind and speech and body also being driven by that one Parameshwara Shakti, but we are rising as ego, thinking, I want this, I want that, I must try for this, I must try for that. We are constantly interfering, but in spite of any amount of interference, what that one Parameshwara Shakti makes happen, alone will happen. And how does it make everything happen? Not by doing anything, but just by being as it is. As Bhagavan says in the 15th paragraph of Nana, by the Isan Sanisdhana Visesha Matratal, by the mere special nature of the presence of God. The presence of God means the being of God. By him just being as he is, everything happens as it's meant to happen.
So what is okay? So there is so Jiva. How is he to plan? How is someone to plan to do certain things? You know,
if you need to plan in accordance with your destiny, you will be made to plan. But why do you think I need to plan? The whole problem is the doership, and the doership is rooted in our false identification, I am this body. So long as we experience ourselves as this body, a body and mind, that's a whole bundle of 5 sheaths, whatever actions are done by this bundle are experienced by them as actions done by me. I planned this, so it happened. So I'm the one who did it. If our plan fructifies, that means that was what was meant to happen. And our planning it, if our planning was a necessary part of it happening, we were made to plan in that way. But often we all know we make plans and the plans don't fructify because they're not what's meant to happen.
Right. So see, if we plan something and it doesn't fructify, then we know that it's not meant to happen. So we'll be at peace, right?
Yeah.
But because we don't know what is meant to fructify and what is not meant to fructify, at this point, I have to plan. Right? I mean, I have to plan something to do. I mean,
why do you think I have to plan? The problem is the I. Let the planning go on. Why should you think I have to plan?
No, I'm not thinking that, but somebody has to plan. Right.
You are thinking that. We're all thinking that. We're thinking, I've got this responsibility. I have to do that. This is what Bhagavan talks about, carrying the burden on our head. We cannot avoid carrying the burden on our head so long as we rise as ego. Therefore, ahalin monamayirake nandru. Therefore, being silent alone is good. Being silent means not rising as ego. So long as we rise as ego, The only problem, and the whole problem, is our rising as ego. That is the problem, and the solution to rising as ego is to hold on to ourself, hold on to our being. Let the external life go on. Let all the planning and all these things go on. We need to separate ourselves more and more from these, from the mind, speech, and body that are doing this planning. By holding on, we can separate ourselves from these things only to the extent to which we hold on to our own being.
If a director of a major, huge organization, like say a hospital, turns to his fellow directors and says, "Oh, don't worry, what will be, he will be fired."
Yes. That is what it was to be. But how many directors of big corporations think like that? I think you can probably say 100% of directors of big corporations still have ego. So they think, I have to plan, I have to do this, I've got this big responsibility.
I think we may have at least one present.
I don't know, where? So, I don't see that one. But maybe I should look within. So long as we look outside, we can't see that one. When we look within, we will realize I am that.
So Richard says, so utter surrender to the source and the dissolution of ego implies that prarabdha applies to the body only.
Yes, but so it is often said in Vedantic texts, but after the attainment of mukti, jiva mukti, the agamya and sanchita cease, only the prarabdha remains. But Bhagavan says in verse 33 of Anubandham, but even that is not true. Even that, Bhagavan says, is an answer to the question of others. That is what he says in that verse 33 is saying sanchita and agamya do not adhere to the jnani, prarabdha does remain, is an answer told to the question of others. Like the husband dying, an unwidowed wife not remaining, the doer dying, all the three karmas will cease. What that means, that the last two lines, Bhagavan expresses it very, very cryptically. But what that means is, if a husband has 3 wives and he dies, do any of those 3 wives remain unwidowed? No, obviously they don't. Likewise, when the doer, that is ego, dies, all the 3 karmas will cease. It's only, but we can, just earlier I was talking about Bhagavan, the prarabdha of Bhagavan's body made him travel to Tiruvannamalai and live for both. That is the prarabdha only for in the view of others, in whose view that body exists. But in the view of the jnani, there is no body or mind or world or anything. There is just I am, and nothing other than I am. So the prarabdha for the jnani seems to exist only in the view of others, not in the view of the jnani.
And the others are seeing the body, so
so
they think the prarabdha applies to the body.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Michael Fenton says, what you just explained brings a much deeper understanding of the Adam and Eve story. Adam and Eve could have all their desires fulfilled by God with only one minor restriction, the apple. God, Bhagavan, knew fully that they would not even be able to resist the apple.
Such is ignorance. The only thing we need to hold on, the forbidden fruit is knowing anything other than ourselves. So we have full liberty know ourselves. If we know anything other than ourselves, that is eating the forbidden fruit, and all problems result therefrom.
I interject. It was the knowledge of good versus evil that God was prohibiting to them.
Good and evil is a dyad. It's a pair of opposites. Those pair of opposites seem to exist only when we rise as ego. All pairs of opposites,
You're right.
good and evil, happiness and unhappiness, existence and non-existence, life and death, knowledge and ignorance, all these dyads, they only exist for ego. So superficially, it's explained the knowledge of good and evil. But if we go deeper, what is the deeper implication? The deeper implication is if we know anything other than ourselves, then only all these pairs of opposites come into existence. If we know nothing other than ourselves, where is good and where is evil?
Let me just interject one final accusation.
Yes.
I accuse you of not believing in the number 2.
Yes. I plead guilty. But even my guilt is only only for show. Unfortunately, I still do believe in number 2 and in many other numbers also. That is the mistake.
Michael,
But though I believe in so many numbers, I know by Bhagavan's grace, at least I've understood I shouldn't believe in so many numbers because there's one only without a second. But we need to make that our experience, and we can make that our experience only by turning within and holding on to the one that actually exists, namely ourself, our own being.
Michael, can I ask you a question about this? So one of my sort of ideas or realizations about this is that in the Adam and Eve story, that apple was like a vasana. So there was only one remaining vasana, one remaining desire, which was to get the apple, right? Like all other desires were met by God and only one remained. And I feel like it's a symbol of how deep we have to surrender. Like you have to surrender all vasanas. If you even have one remaining vasanas, I want the apple.
Yeah.
It prevents you from being your true nature, right?
That is true, but in practice, we cannot give up all vasanas without giving up ego. We can reduce the strength of our vasanas, but the vasanas will still remain to a greater or lesser extent so long as we rise as ego, because it's the very nature of ego to have vasanas. And when you said there was only one thing that they were forbidden, I remembered another story, Pandora's box. That one thing that they were tempted by, that apple, that was opening the Pandora's box. All hell let loose.
Right. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Anu Gulati says, what I pointed out earlier, mentioned earlier, so one way I internalize this is when I plan and things don't go according to plan, despite my best efforts. And then I realize whatever happened was better for my growth than what I had planned. So there is a plan for the body and mind.
Yes. But in practice, so long as we continue rising as ego, we will inevitably be planning. It's part of this bodily life. Planning is am I going to go to the shops today or tomorrow? If I don't go tomorrow, then I'm going to be out of food. It may be more convenient to go today, so I'll go today. We constantly, throughout our life, we're constantly making little plans and big plans, because it's how we navigate through this life. But all this is a This is a part of embodied existence. Planning, we can say, is a part of embodied existence. But when we don't rise as ego in sleep, we don't have to plan anything. Sleep, because of a non-rising of ego, all problems are solved. The only problem with sleep is that we wake up from sleep again. So sleep is, that's why Bhagavan has clarified the distinction between Manolaya and Manonasa. Manolaya is very pleasant, whether it's sleep or coma or general anesthesia or Nirvikalpa Samadhi, whatever it is, it's very pleasant, but it's temporary. We rise again. So we need to seek that dissolution from which we never rise again. But so long as we do rise, then planning, nobody can say honestly that they never plan anything. We are all planning throughout our life. Every moment, where should I do this or should I do that? It's just the nature of living an embodied life. Planning is just a part of that. Just like we so long as I'm this body, I need food, I need clothing, I need shelter, all these things. And in order to get these things, I need to plan. So let's not worry about planning. Let's go back to the root problem. The root problem is rising as I. That's why Bhagavan wasn't concerned about action. He said, even if someone lamented, oh, Bhagavan, I'm such a great sinner, how can I be saved? Bhagavan said, don't give room to that thought, I'm a great sinner. Without even giving room to that thought, hold firmly onto Swarupa Dhyana, self-attentiveness, and you will certainly be saved. So Bhagavan is not concerned about action. Bhagavan is concerned about being. The solution to action is being. So if we want to avoid acting, if we want to avoid planning, if we want to avoid all these things, we need to hold on to our being. To the extent to which we hold on to our being, we thereby subside. And to the extent we subside, all our planning and other thinking subsides along with us.
Good. Thank you, Michael.
That is Bhagavan's teachings. Bhagavan is focusing on one thing and one thing alone, this ego. The whole problem, that is, what is real is only I. But when that I is conflated with adjuncts, all problems arise. That conflation of I with adjuncts is what is called ego. So that is the whole problem. And the solution lies within the problem. That is, ego is the false awareness, I am this body. The solution to that false awareness is the real awareness, I am. So it's only within ego, within the problem, the solution lies. We have a problem and we have a solution. As ego, we have a problem. As we actually are, we have a solution. So let's not worry about planning, about acting, all these things. That is, when Bhagavan said we shouldn't carry the burden on our head, our very rising as ego, once we rise as ego, our very rising as ego is what leads to carrying the burden on our head. So if we want to be free of carrying the burden on our head, we need to cease rising as ego. That is the only solution. So we need to always bear this in mind. But one thing Bhagavan is constantly pointing us towards is this state of not rising. Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham. Bhagavan says in verse 27 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, the state in which I just is without rising, that is the state in which we are that. And how to attain that state? Without investigating the source from which, the place from which this I rises, in other words, our own being, how to attain the state in which I does not rise, how to attain the destruction of ourself in which I does not rise. And without attaining that, how to be in the state, in our own natural state in which we are that?
Michael,
Yeah.
can we look at this moment now and talk about what we are talking, but for only this moment? Because somehow we forget that the view of Bhagavan, at least for investigation, is drishti shrishti. And we somehow are talking about the word that seemingly that there is a word out there and we can plan and tomorrow is waiting for us. But this is not the view of Bhagavan. The drishti srishti is very different.
Is, but if you see, the world is there. The world is there just because you see. Why do we
Yes.
see the world?
Because we rise as an ego, and this
Exactly.
is, but this is simultaneously. We are
Yes.
so God is created with our arising as ego, and in this moment, in this moment, in this moment. So
Yes.
if we are not planning, and if we are not the doer, the doership disappears, and only God remains by definition.
Yes.
We are talking about that, yes.
That's exactly it.
So we can broke in at each moment. We can broke the show, because show is not existing somewhere like reality, because it will
that is what I was saying.
It is momentary,
Yes,
momentary, and moment even is illusion.
Yes, the whole problem doesn't lie out there. It doesn't lie in the past. It doesn't lie in the future. It lies in this I that has risen here and now. So since the problem is here and now, the solution has to be here and now.
So we are projector in the cinema now, and we are in this moment. We can broke the show. We can smash everything.
Yes, exactly. What is it that makes this present moment now? What is it that makes this present place here?
Or our being.
Our presence. It's our presence that makes the present moment present. Our presence that makes the present place present. So here and now are defined by I. That moment in time where I am, that is the present.
But it doesn't change, Michael.
Where I am, that is the present. So we need to be in the here and now by holding on to the root, that is the source of this I, the source from which this I rises. And that source is our own being.
Is this why Sadhu Om says that other way of unveiling is to look for now moment?
It's not another way, it's another clue pointing to the same way. It's the same, it's not two different things. Because what makes, that's why I was saying, what makes the present moment present? It's I, the place, the moment in time where I am, that is the present moment. The point in space where I am, that is the present place. So it's our own presence that makes the present time and present place appear present. So let us hold on to our own, let's forget about the time and space and all these things. Hold on to the root, our own presence. That is what we need to hold on to. Our own presence means our own being.
And it broke time because our being is not in time.
No, it's not in time. Time and space appear only in the view of ego. Is there any time or space in sleep? It's only in waking and dream that we experience time and space because we've risen as ego. When we don't rise as ego, there's neither time nor place. There's just pure presence, our own presence, the presence of ourself.
So are we in a strange situation to say that my car out there doesn't exist, but only it appears to exist now in this moment, only because I am remembering my car?
This moment and the car that you're remembering in this moment all appear only in your view.
This is a mixing of the level. When you rise, you identify yourself as a body. Then you see the car, you see the world, you see the outside.
You see
When you
time
turn
and
with-
you see space and everything, yes.
When you turn within, you become in deep sleep state. It's
Yes.
always deep sleep state. I am always is I am. So when you say now, investigate, you subside. Every
Exactly.
time I rise, Eric rise, he's a body, action happens. But every time I pay my attention, I turn within, I subside. So it's a war between. It's
Yeah.
happening.
Yes.
But
It's a
as
war
soon-
it's a war within our own heart, between our liking to go outwards and our liking to go return back within.
But it seems that it's happening, but it's not happening at all.
No, no.
Because I am always.
Yes. Exactly.
This is unmoving.
Yes.
This
But
is
it seems
stillness.
why it seems to be happening, because we have risen as I. That's
Yeah.
why Bhagavan's always coming back to this root.
Yeah.
This I is the problem.
So it's not like planning or doing, or it's not that. It's not
That's all
okay.
part
It's
of the appearance, but it's inevitable once we rise.
like now I have pain in my neck.
Yeah.
I'm aware that I have pain in my neck, but when I fall in sleep, there's no pain. But when I
Yes,
wake
yes.
up in the morning, I have pain.
Yes.
But it's not real.
None of it is real. The I that is experiencing it all is not real.
So the more I come back to that I, the more I subside,
Yeah.
the more love I will have to come back.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
happiness, the real happiness now.
Exactly. That's all there is. Bhagavan's teaching, if we really understand Bhagavan's teaching, they're so, so simple.
Yes, very simple.
Thank you, Michael.
Then just one moment. Can we say that then Ajatavada doctrine also can be a method if we are very precise, because it is talking about the same thing?
That is Drishti Shrishti is pointing us towards Ajata.
To Ajatavada, yes.
That is, so long as we rise as ego, Ajata is not our experience.
Mm.
So Bhagavan has to come down one level and says, yes, all this appears. Why does it appear? To whom does it appear? It appears to you. So you have a problem. Attend to yourself. When you see that you as ego do not exist, then nothing else exists. That's why the ultimate truth has to be Ajata. But there's no use talking about Ajata now, because now we're experiencing all this. So long as we experience all this, it has to be said, yes, you experience all this, but all this has no independent existence. It exists only in your view. So investigate the one to whom all this appears.
Yes, but Drishti Shrishti breaks up to Ajata in the split of the second. If we understand Drishti Shrishti even experientially.
When we see ourselves as we actually are, then Drishti Shrishti, there's neither Drishti nor Shrishti. The Drishti Shrishti occurs because of the seer. There can't be any seeing without seer. There can't be any perception without a perceiver. That perceiver is ego. So the reason Bhagavan teaches us Drishti Shrishti is to draw our attention away from the appearance back towards the one to whom it appears. That's why Bhagavan often uses this question, to whom, to whom? And he says, investigate to whom. Investigate to whom means turn your attention away from this appearance back towards the one to whom it appears, namely yourself.
The same trick. When you see I rise, you come back.
Yeah.
You don't follow it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
If you follow it, you fall in the trap. But
Yeah.
it's okay. It's okay to follow it.
It's not okay. We suffer. We all
yeah,
suffer.
we suffer,
We
but
suffer.
I mean, it's because
Yeah. If we want to be free of suffering, we need to just hold on to our being, and thereby not give any room for rising.
It's just a gentle way to turn away.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if I worry about I'm gone for 2 weeks, it's endless.
Yeah. That's why we need to be here and now in the present moment. Don't worry about all the time we've wasted in the past or all the time we may waste in the future. Let's make use of this present moment to hold on to my being here and now. That's all we can do. If we think I will attend to myself when I get home from work this evening, by the time we get home from work, we'll be too tired and we'll be thinking of other things. We need to attend to ourselves here and now, this very moment, not give a moment's delay. Only if we have such one single-mindedness, ekagra, one-pointedness, we can we will succeed in this path. So nothing else matters except holding on to our being.
Michael, because Advaita rejects the volition activities of the Brahman, and then we have this mystery about Satchitananda, but then somehow from nowhere basically jumps the idea of Shakti, which projects in Brahman. Do you feel that this is somehow a weaker point in Advaitic explanation of the word? Because, for example, in Kashmiri Shaivism, they just say that God has Vimarsha, he has, because he is omnipowerful, etc., so he can wish to create the world in order just for fun. Okay.
In
our case, what is this mystery now that we are talking?
Okay. When you say about God just wishes to do this, Bhagavan has answered this in verse 24 of Upadeshundya. What he says in verse 24 of Upadeshundya, Irakumekayal isa jivagal oru porleava undipara upadi unave verundipara. What that means is, by being nature, that is in their real nature, which is just being, God and soul are one substance. So their one substance is their being. Upadi unave veru, that is the awareness of adjuncts is what makes it appear different. What does Bhagavan mean by this awareness of adjuncts? Who is aware of adjuncts? It is only ego who is aware of adjuncts. That is because we as ego rise and take ourselves to be a body. I am this body. So because I'm this body, I'm limited. So my presence is limited. I'm only limited within this little area in space, and this limited time this limited period in time. I'm limited within this. So our presence is limited. Our knowledge is limited. Our love is limited. There's so many desires, and our power is limited. Because we see ourselves having all these limitations, because we're limited, God seems to be something other than ourselves. So how is God? I'm limited, but God is not limited. God is infinite. So God has to be present everywhere. He's omnipresent. He's all-pervading. He has to know everything because his knowledge is not limited. So he's all-knowing or omniscient. He's all-loving or omnibenevolent. He's all-powerful or omnipotent. All of these are we have put these upadhis on God. God is, so long as we see ourselves as limited, all these upadhis of God seem to be true. But according to Bhagavan, God is beyond all upadhis. God is not all-pervading. God is not all-knowing. God is not all-loving. God is not all-powerful, because there's no all other than God for him to pervade, for him to know, for him to love, or for him to have power over. He alone is. So Kashmir Shaivism is Kashmir Shaivism, though they claim to be non-dualistic, it's actually dualistic, because they say the world is real. They say all this is God's Vimarshana. They take it all as real. But true non-duality says there is one only without a second. So any second thing, anything other than the one, has to be unreal. It has to be a mere appearance. And to whom does it all appear? This is the unique contribution of Bhagavan. But if there's any inadequacy in Advaita philosophy, it stops by saying there's only one, you are that, and therefore all this is an appearance. But Bhagavan goes one step further. He says, to whom does this appear? You can't have an appearance without it appearing to someone. So Bhagavan says, to whom does all this appear? If we turn our attention back to the one to whom God and his Vimarshana and this world and all this appears, that one to whom all these things appear is ego. When we turn our attention back towards ego, ego subsides, dissolved back into its source. Then there is no separate God, no Vimarshana, nothing. There is just God alone, that pure being.
Yes, but somehow we take this ego like a rabbit from nowhere. We start talking about
all these. That's why Bhagavan is constantly stressing the whole problem is ego. That Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu. Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu means 40 verses on what is. But in most of the verses of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, Bhagavan is talking about ego. Why is he talking about ego? Because ego is what is hiding what is. The underlying reality of ego, that is what is. So only if we investigate ego can we know what is.
Thanks, Michael.
So even Ramana exists because our ego.
No, Ramana alone exists as I. He seems to be a person like us. That is because of ego. But he alone is what exists. Because Ramana Swarupa is Atma Swarupa. And Atma Swarupa alone is what actually exists.
Thank you, Michael. So that we'll go to the next question. Hopefully, the last questions. Sadasiva says, I love this teaching and association with the wise, but is it not ego which allows the communication between us to take place?
Yes, yes. Everything is ego. That's what Bhagavan's teaching. That's what Bhagavan is constantly pointing out. So if we continue enjoying all these conversations, talking about Bhagavan's teaching, of course we need to understand Bhagavan's teachings clearly, but if we've really understood Bhagavan's teachings, we won't just be talking about them, we'll be putting it into practice. And the practice is turning our attention within and thereby ceasing to rise as ego.
Good. Thank you, Michael.
So these teachings, Bhagavan's teachings, are useful precisely because they direct our attention back to ourselves. But if we don't turn our attention back to ourselves, if we just continue attending to the teachings, we're missing the point of the teachings, because the whole point of the teaching is to turn our attention towards ourselves. So why we keep coming back to these teachings is because our attention keeps going outwards. So we need to remind ourselves to turn back within. So the teachings are great support, but ultimately, even the teachings in words, that is, have to be left behind. Because as Bhagavan said, the real teaching is silence. The words are useful because they're pointing us towards that silence, which is our own being. But so long as we hold on to the words and forget to follow where the words are pointing us, which is back towards our own being, we're missing the point. So we need to use Bhagavan's teaching as constant reminders that we need to turn back within.
Thank you, Michael. Bruce, last question from Bruce. Go ahead. You there, Bruce?
That's the best question of all. Silence.
Yeah, there. Hey, Bruce, you're muted still.
Yeah,
Silence
sorry.
is the best question
ahead.
and the best answer.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Bruce.
Yeah, so I just posted it in the chat. I'm trying to see where it is. Here it is. It's just an analogy, but I said the ego state is a schizophrenic state. The schizophrenic tries to hold many minds as real. The end of schizophrenia comes with the death of I as ego that tries to hold to reality as many. Now,
What's your question?
one of the reasons why I'm choosing to use a mental health term is because the egoic state is a mental health crisis. And we have to acknowledge it as that and quit, there's a term, which is, I forget the term, the psychological term, where you're, where a mental illness is like, is like labeled as bad, which it is bad. But we think that normalcy is, we think that schizophrenia is a state of normality, basically.
Yeah. What is actually normal, what is actually natural is only I am. But when we conflate that I am with adjuncts as I am this body, that is the root of all mental illness.
Right.
So we cannot say that we are devoid of mental illness so long as we have this root disease of ego.
Exactly. The stigma.
How to get rid of this ego? Only by holding on to our being. That's the only solution.
The ego also grasp the term, the term, psychological term of stigma, right? Like it's mental health is a bad thing, right? And normal people, stigmatize those who are mentally ill. Now, Bhagavan, in a sense, is the absolute healthy self. We are unhealthy selves that are living in that schizophrenic state. So we are constantly looking at the shell, the silver in a shell, and thinking that it's real. Numbers are silver in a shell, Robert Boyer. So it's just, you can call it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. But if we let go of that sense of doership, then it's really God takes over everything.
Yeah.
Which is,
it's
already happening anyways.
We can't let go of the sense of doership so long as we rise as ego. Because ego itself is the sense of doership. So but that is, we can talk about the problem, we can describe the problem in so many ways. But the only, that is, understanding the problem is useful only to the extent it makes clear what is the solution. As Bhagavan said, the whole problem is our rising as ego. Why we see all this meanness? To whom do this many has appeared to myself as ego. So ego is the root problem. So, and the only way to get rid of ego is to hold on to our being. So we need to dwell on, not on the problem. We can go on thinking about the problem till the cows come home, for all eternity we can go on thinking about the problem. We need to start thinking about the solution. The solution is our own being. Be as you are, just be, sumairu. That is the solution. And in order to just be, we need to hold on to our being, to the exclusion of all else.
Thank you, Michael.
Good. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Bhagavan.
Good. So, okay, last question. Is boredom ego too?
To whom is boredom?
Yes.
That is, this question Bhagavan gave us, to whom, is such a useful question. To whom is boredom? To whom is mental illness? To whom is all this world? To whom are all these problems? That question, to whom, turns our attention away from all these things back towards ourselves.
Right. So as you said, we can keep on analyzing this ego stuff.
We can go on analyzing it for all eternity. But
there are 7 billion people, and each one is going to look at this ego in different angles and so forth. But the one thing that is so important is self-attention.
Practice.
Exactly, self-attention.
Yeah, exactly.
Swami Sadhu Om said somewhere, it is the only watertight theory.
Yeah,
all other theories are filled with loopholes and contradictions.
Yeah.
If it's coming from Bhagavan or whoever it is, the only watertight theory is self-attention.
Yeah.
Do we have time for one more question?
Okay. Okay, last one.
Okay. Because I was established in the Dzogchen tradition, and but have problems with their method, because it's you have to be very precise there. And at the same time, I was not sure that it is working with Vasanas, because the main idea is that everything is self-liberating. So whatever is happening is disappearing by its nature. So if you don't merge with it, or not being catch in it, it will disappear by itself. And this is the main method. They say, so nothing will catch you.
Okay,
but I was thinking that
to whom does it appear and disappear? Let anything appear, let anything disappear. So long as it's appearing and disappearing, there's one to whom it is all appearing and disappearing. That is the problem.
So they're keeping the ego. You cannot catch it, because they say that they have the direct introduction, so they catch they have a glimpse of Brahman, and then they are in this state of pure presence this is happening.
Who can have a glimpse of Brahman is a meaningless idea, absolutely meaningless, because a glimpse means there's one who is glimpsing. Brahman can never be an object of perception or object of awareness. If you glimpse something, that thing that you glimpse is an object. So there's no such thing as a glimpse of Brahman, a glimpse of the real self, or whatever people say. This is all meaningless. So long, the one to whom all glimpses appear is ego. So we need to stop looking for glimpses. We need to look, to whom do all these glimpses occur? We need to constantly turn our attention back to ourselves. And you say, they say that you can't catch ego. Yes, Bhagavan agrees you can't catch ego, but you need to try to catch ego, because only when you try to catch ego will ego disappear and will you merge back into your being. So
all this idea of micro satoris in Zen tradition will be criticized from Bhagavan.
Any plurality, knowledge of multiplicity is ignorance. So if you've got mini sotaris, You've got one and then you've got another one and then you've got another one. That's multiplicity. That's ignorance. To whom do all these mini sotaris appear?
They will say to nobody, but then you appear again.
How can something appear without appearing to somebody? That is absolutely meaningless. We need to, this is where viveka is necessary. We need to use our intelligence to understand how can there be an appearance without it appearing to anyone? In order for there to be an appearance, it has to appear to something. So everything that appears, it appears to ego. So who am I to whom all these things appear? Otherwise, we're just playing mind games. We're just getting caught up in lots of nice ideas, and we have all sorts of beliefs about Satori and mini Satori and this and that, and glimpses and everything, all meaningless. Who am I? That's all that we need to find out. Not by asking who am I, but by investigating who am I. To whom do all these things appear? To whom do all these ideas, there's so many different philosophies, so many different religions, so many different isms. To whom do they all appear? We need to follow Bhagavan's teachings, we need to be extremely one-pointed. Ekagrita means grasping only one, and the one we need to grasp is the one that actually exists, namely ourself.